Hey, my name's Mike. Well, pastor at North Village Church. I've been married 20 plus years to my wife, Holly. I have a 15-year-old daughter named Kennedy, 12-year-old son named Tucker, and putting together these videos for encouragement in marriage because marriage is a gift, right? And this video today is about family and in-laws. How do we navigate family and in-laws? I got to tell you, personally, this is probably the area of our marriage that we struggle with the most. And it isn't because our family and in-laws are horrible. They're not. They're actually amazing. But the reality is that me and my wife come from two totally different familial backgrounds, so that we approach things different, and it just creates some challenges. So man, let's look at Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Those words, one flesh, right? That's supernatural. When a husband and wife become one flesh, that's supernatural. And what moves them in that direction is that leaving and cleaving. Did you catch that? In Genesis 2, verse 24, leaving mom and dad, cleaving, right? Being joined to one another, becoming one flesh. So let me just walk through some just practically, what does it mean to leave and cleave in marriage? The first one is financially. You want to create a clear separation financially. So that's moving away from mom and dad helping you with credit cards and gas and spending money and telephone and insurance and just whatever way, because sometimes money can come with strings attached, and money can make relationships a little messy. And so the sooner that you can wean yourself off their support, remove that safety net from mom and dad, look each other in the eye. There's just something powerful about looking your spouse in the eye, locking hands with each other, crying out to God, we need you to show up. That's going to help you leave and cleave right there. The second one, to leave and cleave, is just to emotionally create clear separation. So that's when you might have a hard day at work or a frustration with a friend, you usually would call mom and dad, tell them about those experiences, listen to their counsel or empathy for you. Instead, we want to pull away from doing that with mom and dad. We want to do that with our spouse. We want to save those conversations for our spouse, even if it's difficult and it's clunky and it takes time and it's not as supportive as it was with our mom and dad. It's okay because we're leaving and cleaving. We're pulling away from mom and dad, and we're finding that with one another in our spouse. The third way that we can leave and cleave in marriage is spiritually, right? That instead of going to mom and dad to ask those questions, or for mom and dad to pray about this decision we're trying to make, it's good to do those things. But first, we want to bring those questions to our spouse. We want to, those frustrations with God to our spouse, those things that we're praying about with our spouse. I know for me, we have two children. I mean, if they get married one day and they come to us to ask us for counsel, the first thing I'm going to say is like, hey, have you prayed about this? Have you talked to your spouse about this? Before I want to get involved in that conversation, because I want them to cleave to one another and to Jesus. So the fourth one is just physical boundaries. Leaving and cleaving and declaring clear boundaries for family and in-laws. Like how often are we going to be at one another's house? How long are we going to stay when we're at one another's house? Are they just dropping in unannounced, or are we taking advantage, where they're still doing our laundry, they're still making us meals? Like those are physical boundaries that, hey, we're becoming less parental child relationship and more peer-to-peer relationship. And one of the ways to do that is just to have clear physical boundaries and to communicate those boundaries and where you're going to spend holidays and how long you're going to be there. And the sooner you can communicate that to family and in-laws, the easier it's going to go, and the more you're going to have to turn toward each other in that leaving and cleaving. The last way to leave and cleave in marriage is I call it communicatively. I don't know if that's a word, but you want to communicate to moms and dads what you're trying to accomplish in your leaving and cleaving. I found it's best for each child to communicate, to be the primary spokesperson for their mom and dad. But Scripture calls us to honor our parents, no matter if we think they did a good job or not. We're to honor our parents, and one of the ways we can honor them is to just overly communicate. What an honoring thing to do, to sit down and share with mom and dad, hey, Scripture calls us to leave and cleave, and here's how we see this working out, and express your gratitude for them, the investment they made in your life, how much you appreciate what they've done. But communication is an area where you can leave and cleave to draw out the truth of Genesis chapter 2. Hey, it's possible you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, older, whatever, and you're thinking leaving and cleaving doesn't really apply. But I mean, one, I would just caution you not to overlook the importance of mom and dad in your life, no matter how old or independent you might feel. And two, it's possible that your leaving and cleaving is not so much applied to mom and dad as it might be to your friends. As we get older in life, our friends take more and more of an important role in our lives. And so you could apply all those practical points of application to maybe your network of friends, if that's where you see the leaving needs to take place, because what matters is that we're cleaving to our spouses, and ultimately together that we're husband and wife cleaving to the Lord, right? That Jesus is the foundation of the marriage. Jesus is the strength of the marriage. Jesus is the one that brought these two together, and Jesus is the one that's holding on to us in this marriage, and that's why it's so important in that leaving and cleaving, that you're not just pulling away from mom and dad to attach to someone else, but you're pulling away from mom and dad to attach to your spouse as you both grow stronger in the Lord. And I hope that helps you. Next video, we're going to look at finances, and we'll dig out how that works out in marriage. Thanks so much.